The alarm doesn't wake you anymore. You're already awake at 6:14 on a Tuesday, lying still in a room that's quiet enough to hear your own pulse, staring at a ceiling that costs less than what's sitting in the brokerage account on your phone. You don't reach for the phone right away. That's new. 6 months ago, you would have. 6 months ago, the number used to mean something urgent, like a wound you kept checking. Now you let it sit. The coffee maker starts on its own because you set it the night before. A small thing, but it's the kind of small thing that means you've stopped scrambling. You get up, you pour. You stand at the window in a zip code nobody's impressed by and watch the street come to life in that gray-blue Tuesday way where the garbage trucks are already running and the guy across the street is warming up his car. Nobody knows what's in your account. Nobody would guess. And for the first time in a long time, that doesn't bother you. It feels like armor. There's a version of this life that looks completely different from the outside. And then there's the version you actually lived. You didn't grow up with money, but you didn't grow up without it either. Middle, always middle. The kind of middle where your parents paid the bills but talked about money like it was whether something that happened to you, not something you controlled. Your father worked hard. He made decent money. He spent decent money. By the time he retired, there was a house with equity and a 401k that looked respectable until you divided it by the number of years he had left to live and realized it wasn't respectable at all. It was just a number, and numbers without context are just noise. You absorbed all of that without absorbing the lesson. You watched the performance of financial stability without watching the math behind it. And you carried that into your 20s like a genetic condition, the idea that doing okay meant you were doing it right. You got the job. The real one, the one you'd worked toward, the one with the salary that made your mom cry a little on the phone when you told her, $68,000 a year. At 24, that felt like air after drowning. You paid off your credit card. You bought a decent car. Nothing flashy, but decent. You told yourself you'd start investing soon, which in the vocabulary of your 20s meant at some point, which meant when it felt less risky, which meant when you had more information, which meant never. Here is the trap, and it doesn't announce itself. It has no sound. It doesn't feel dangerous. It feels like Tuesday. It feels like the ordinary friction of a life in motion, the $180 dinner for a friend's birthday, because everyone split it evenly, and you didn't want to be the one who said anything. The weekend trip that wasn't strictly necessary, but the tickets were already bought. The apartment upgrade that seemed logical, because you were making more now, and the old place had mold in the bathroom corner anyway. None of it feels wrong in the moment. Every single decision has a reason. That's the thing about the trap. It's not made of bad decisions. It's made of reasonable ones. It's made of ordinary Tuesday logic that compounds quietly into a life where you're always earning and always spending and always almost there but never actually there. The worst part is the feeling in your body. Not shame. Exactly. More like a low hum of anxiety that sits just below your sternum, the kind you stop noticing because it's always there. You feel it in the parking garage at work when you're walking to your car and you run the month in your head. You feel it when the check engine light comes on and your first thought isn't inconvenience. It's math. How much? When? Can I absorb it? What moves if I have to move something? You feel it at dinner tables with your family when someone asks how things are going and you say fine. Because fine is easier than the actual answer, which is that things are technically fine, but you're building nothing. You're moving, but not forward. You're working, but not accumulating. And you can't explain that in a way that doesn't sound ungrateful for a life that from the outside looks pretty good. Nobody notices. Now meet Marcus. You and Marcus started at the same company 6 months apart. Same department, almost identical salaries. His was $71,000 to your $68,000, a gap small enough to not matter. Same city, same rough rent range. On paper, the same starting point, the way two runners look the same at the starting block. Marcus drove a truck, not an expensive one, but a newer one, a dark gray pickup that he financed and took good care of and always had clean because he ran it through the wash on Saturdays. The truck mattered to him in the way things matter when you're 25, and the truck is proof that you made it somewhere. He wore a watch, not a luxury brand, but a brand that looked like one if you weren't paying attention. The kind with a clean white face and a heavy feel on the wrist. He wore it to every company event. He wore it to happy hours. It did what he needed it to do without costing what it looked like it cost. Marcus liked to go out. That wasn't a character flaw. It was just how he processed the week. Fridays meant something to him. The transition from the work week to the real life, marked by a round of drinks and then dinner somewhere with cloth napkins and a bill that felt appropriate for how hard he'd worked. You went sometimes. You liked Marcus. He was warm and funny and genuinely good company. But there was always a moment, usually when the bill came, where you'd do the mental math and feel that hum again. Marcus upgraded his apartment when his lease ended. Not dramatically, but visibly. A little more square footage, a building with a gym in the basement, a view that wasn't stunning, but was better than a parking lot. He sent pictures to the group chat and everyone said the same thing, that it looked great, that he'd done well. You liked the photo, you meant it. But here is where the road splits, in a way that looked like nothing at the time. You had been reading, not obsessively, not in any formal or structured way, but you'd gone down a few threads online about how money actually works when left alone, and something had clicked in a way it never had in school. Not a formula, not a rule, more like a feeling, an image of money in motion, like a river that carves deeper and wider the longer it runs. You opened an account. You automated a transfer, $350 every other week. It felt like nothing, because it was a small amount, and small amounts feel like nothing. You did not tell anyone. Marcus did not open an account that year. He thought about it. He said he'd do it after the move settled, after the truck was paid down a little, after things leveled out. The things never leveled out, not exactly, because life doesn't level, it just keeps arriving. And so the account stayed theoretical while the truck and the apartment and the Friday dinners stayed real. That was the moment. Not dramatic, not cinematic in any obvious way. Two guys, same age, same Tuesday, same rough amount of money, one of whom put $350 into motion and one of whom did not. Nobody knew. The years after that are not a montage. They don't feel like accumulation when you're inside them. They feel like nothing, which is almost worse. You kept the automation. You raised it twice when you got raises not by the full raise, but by a portion of it. The part you figured you wouldn't miss because you'd never had it. You moved apartments once, but laterally, not up. You drove the same car for 4 years longer than felt cool. When people asked about your weekend, you said quiet, a lot, because quiet was accurate. You weren't performing sacrifice. You weren't living like you were poor. But you were making 100 small decisions that accumulated in a direction nobody could see, including you, because the thing about compounding is that it looks like nothing for a very long time, and then suddenly it doesn't. Marcus moved again. Nicer building this time. He got a second truck when the first one's transmission died, and the logic made sense. He needed a truck. The old one was costing more to fix than it was worth. A new one made practical sense. He met someone, got engaged, and the engagement party was beautiful. The kind of beautiful that costs what it costs, and you don't think about that, because it's a once-in-a-lifetime thing, and once-in-a-lifetime things are worth it. Everyone said so. You went to the engagement party. You were happy for him. You drank the champagne and made conversation and drove home in the older car, and the drive felt fun. Not sad, not envious, just quiet. The hum was getting quieter, slowly, without you fully realizing it. There's a stretch of time it's different for everyone, but for you, it was somewhere between year 3 and year 6 that nobody tells you about. It is the part where the decisions are already made and the math is already working, but there is absolutely no external evidence of that. Your life looks like it always looked. Your apartment is the same. Your car is the same. You don't have anything to point to. No truck, no watch, no view from the 14th floor. You just have a number in an account that's growing in a way that's starting to feel like something without yet being something you can point to. This is the lonely middle, and it is genuinely hard. You're at a dinner, a cousin's birthday, parents there, a couple of your old friends. Someone asks what you're up to, the way people ask at dinner, casually, expecting a surface answer. You say good, work is steady, And then someone else mentions they just bought a condo, and you do the math in your head, not to judge, just instinctively. And you see how that math works, and you understand something about it that you couldn't have 3 years ago. You don't say anything. You eat your food. You drive home. The parking garage at work becomes a strange place for you. You use those 30 seconds between turning off the engine and opening the door to think, not strategically, just to sit in the quiet before the day starts. You notice things in those 30 seconds. You notice that you feel less like you're running from something and more like you're running towards something, even if you can't name it precisely yet. The hum is quieter here. Nobody sees that. Your phone shows a number that crosses $180,000 somewhere on a Thursday morning when you're making coffee. You see it. You put the phone down. You finish making the coffee. You feel something that isn't quite celebration, it's more like recognition. Like you've seen a landmark you were heading toward for a long time and now it's behind you. Nobody knows. Marcus got laid off in March. You heard through the group chat. The message was casual in the way that only barely conceals panic, keeping it short term. Just a bump. Already talking to some people. Going to take a little time. You texted him privately. He was fine, he said. He was probably not fine. The layoff hit you too. Same round. Same day. You found out on a Thursday afternoon in a calendar invite you got at 11:47 a.m. from someone in HR, which is how these things come. Always without ceremony. Always through an invite with a one-sentence description that tells you nothing but you already know. You closed your laptop. You sat for a moment. You did the math not in a panic, in a way that surprised you with its own calmness. You had 8 months of expenses liquid. You had the portfolio. You had time. Not infinite time, but time, which is different from what you'd had before, when you'd had nothing but the next paycheck and the week between it and you. You called your mother. She was worried. You told her you were fine and you meant it. You went for a walk. You ate dinner. You slept. Marcus liquidated his stocks. He'd started an account eventually. Late, smaller, but he'd started because he needed the cushion, and the account was the only cushion there was. He sold in a month when everything was down. Because you sell when you need to, and he needed to. You did not sell. You did not touch anything. You applied for jobs with the specific and unhurried energy of someone who has options, which is the only energy that actually produces good outcomes in a job search. Marcus took the first thing that came back. It was fine. It was lateral. He told the group chat it was a good move, which it might have been, hard to know. You took 3 months. You interviewed carefully. You chose. That was the gap becoming visible. Not on any scoreboard, just in the math of 2 different lives in the same storm. The job you took paid $94,000 and had a title you hadn't had before. You started it on a Monday in October, drove the same car to a new building, found the same kind of parking garage. The months after felt almost identical to the months before, externally. But internally, something had shifted into a different register. The number in the account at this point was $340,000. You didn't tell anyone. You couldn't, exactly not because you were hiding it, but because there was no natural way to say it that didn't make the conversation into something it wasn't. Money is private in the way that love is private. You feel it constantly, but you don't explain it at dinner. You just carry it with you, and it changes the way everything else feels. You raised the automatic transfer again. You did not buy a newer car. The car ran fine. There is a specific Tuesday evening, you're 31. It's October. It's cool in the way that October Tuesdays get when you open the app, not to check anxiously, but just to look at the number the way you'd look at anything you built slowly. The number is past $400,000. Something is happening in there that you are not causing anymore. It's moving on its own. Quietly, without announcement, you make pasta, you watch something, you go to sleep. Nobody knows. Nobody would believe it if you told them. You live in the same zip code. You drive the same car. You don't look like a person who has $400,000 working for them in the background of an otherwise Tuesday evening, but you are. And the machine is running. By the time the number reaches something that starts to feel like the territory of real freedom, you stop checking it as often, not because you don't care, but because you trust it now. You set it in motion a long time ago with $350 every 2 weeks and some decisions that looked like nothing, and now it runs. You check it the way you'd check on something you know is fine. The thing nobody tells you about reaching real financial stability is that it doesn't feel like the movies. There's no moment where the confetti falls. There's no new house, no party, no announcement. It's more like realizing mid-walk that you've been breathing easily for 10 minutes without thinking about it. You notice it in the absence of the hum. Your father calls you on a Thursday night. He sounds strange on the phone, slower than usual, careful with words in a way that means something before he says it. He tells you your mother has been diagnosed with something that requires a specialist, possibly surgery, a process that will take months and cost more than their insurance covers cleanly. He's trying to sound okay. He's 63 years old, and he's trying to sound okay to his child. You don't panic. That's the thing. You feel it lands hard, the way news about your parents always does, right in the center of your chest. But the financial panic that would have come 10 years ago, the cascading math of how and from where and at what cost, that doesn't come. You just feel the thing that it is, which is that your mother is sick and your father is scared and you are their kid and you're going to handle it. You start making calls the next morning. You find the specialist. You deal with the insurance gap without it being a crisis because you have a thing you built quietly over a decade that exists specifically for moments like this one. You don't have to choose between being present and being responsible. You don't have to do the math at the same time that you're trying to be a son. You fly home. You sit with your father in a waiting room with 2 bright lights. He doesn't know what's in your account. He doesn't need to. He just needs you there, all of you, with your whole attention, without the part of your mind that used to be perpetually doing math in the background. You are entirely there. That's what it was for. Not the number, not the milestone, not the story you'd tell someone at a dinner party. Just this. Being completely present in the worst kind of waiting room because the financial architecture of your life is stable enough to hold this moment without cracking. The money did its job. It cleared the field. What's left is just the human part. Your mother recovers. It takes time. You go back 3 times over 4 months. You don't think about the cost. You think about her. You're standing in a parking garage on a Tuesday morning. Not the same one as before. Different city now. Different job. But parking garages have a way of being the same everywhere. The echo of tires on concrete. The specific quality of fluorescent light against cement. The 30 seconds of quiet between turning off the engine and opening the door. You sit in those 30 seconds. The number in the account is something your younger self would have found incomprehensible. Not impossible to imagine you'd imagined it, but incomprehensible in the way that real things are more real than imagined things. You built it with nothing flashy. You built it with automation and patience and 100 Tuesday evenings where you did nothing and let the machine run. You never had the truck. Nobody bought you champagne for any of it. Nobody noticed when it started. Nobody noticed when it became something real. But it's real. You open the door. You walk toward the elevator. You are not the wealthiest person in this building, and you are not the most impressive-looking person in this parking garage, and nothing about you announces anything to anyone. But there is something in you that is quietly, irreversibly different from the person who started this thing with $350 and a Tuesday and no audience. What you actually have is not a number. It's the absence of a ceiling. It's the freedom to choose what the next Tuesday looks like without the hum underneath it. Next week, we're going to talk about the exact moment when having money stops being about security and starts being about something harder to name. Stay with it.